I describe the Amazon as, as a cathedral. It's a place where you enter and suddenly completely overwhelms you. There's such a diversity, such a complexity. You don't have to be a nature lover. You just have to admire beauty.
When I'm here, I feel like the sense of adventure, what I'm gonna see, there's always something to surprise you. Just being in the forest is peaceful. It's very difficult to express, but it gives you happiness.
It's a perfect spot where lots of ecological processes developed into creating high biodiversity, the formation of the rivers, how they run in one direction, then run in another, the different types of soils, the erosion that the rivers cause, modifying the landscape.
It's a combination of many rivers and many geographies. It's one of the most complex ecosystems, but also is one that is important to everybody because regulates the climate. It brings also many goods for society. We are where the Amazon is born, in these high elevation mountains, snowy peaks. The water that is part of the cycle of the Amazon, where the water that maintains the forest, starts here. The journey from here all the way to the Atlantic is a long journey of about 6,000 kilometers. This morning we were on top of the last mountain, basically where the humidity is coming from the Atlantic Ocean, far away in the coast of Brazil, hits the mountains and then it starts dropping and continues a cycle. It's a remarkable place, but it's also very susceptible to climate change. And that's one of the things that we need to understand better. In this place, we are conducting a number of experiments who are also determining what is the thermal capacity of species to resist climate change. So our journey started in Lima. We flew from Lima to Cusco. And here in Cusco, we started the journey and going, crossing the mountains and then coming down to the Rio Madre de Dios here. And then from here, we are going later on to Puerto Maldonado. So we covered this distance. It's a very small, short distance. Our main concern is to protect this line, which is the one that we cross, which is the montane forest, the cloud forest, which is the most fragile area in terms of climate change impacts. And that's one of our main concerns. There's plenty of this. There is not much of this. And there is where we need to put our attention. So we are right now at the Huayquecha Biological Station, which is run by a Peruvian NGO called Conservación Amazónica. And this is the highest elevation of all of them. We are about 3,000 meters. The tree line is about 200 meters above us. One of the questions is, what happens when there is less humidity as a result of chopping the forest and climate change? And we need to understand that. So what we have is a coating, which is preventing the humidity to reach the forest. And it's a very laborious type of research, but it's necessary to understand what is going to happen. What we are covering in this transit is cloud forests, montane forests, and then intermediates that are other types of forests that are like wetlands, riparian forests, and we end up in what is the actual rainforest as we all know it. It is the objective of the trip is to mix science also with conservation, how we use science to conserve biodiversity and also allow these cycles of water that keep this biodiversity alive. And the transit is what is going to give us the answer, because species react to changing weather and also give us an idea of how to design solutions. And there are many. I've been working in the Amazon for 40 years, and every time I go, I discover something I've never seen. And that is really crazy. This is a place with the highest levels of biological diversity in the world. There is over 1,000 species in this transit. And in every type of organisms, there is superlatives. So I wanted to show you, number one, what is the importance of mountains for climate, and also what is the importance of continuous forests in mountains in order to avoid massive extinctions. In order to find solutions, we need to be based in science. And this trip consists of visiting amazing places where there is a science that is guiding conservation these days. Here is where we understand how species react to the changing weather. Manu National Park is surrounded by other types of protected areas, including private protected areas and indigenous lands. This place is humongous, it's several million hectares, and the forest is in very good shape.
In Colombia, where I'm from, we have like 1/4 of the country is Amazon basin. And during my formation as a researcher, I usually went into the Andes, which we have a large portion, the dry forest in the northern part. It was always like a place to go, somewhere to discover. And then when I started to study, I saw that basically the biodiversity of this group in the Andes towards the lowlands, it was just unparalleled. Insects are a great model to study because of many reasons. Whenever you look, it doesn't matter, you always find an insect from the north to the south. And this means that they are a rich source of protein, of food for every other organism. So they are basically linked to every other organism through the food web. And this interconnection with the whole system makes them really important because if we study insects, we can really then see the whole picture.
We need to understand how the forest responds to changes. We need to understand how pollination, how seed dispersal, and the different biological processes take place. For that, you need to be recording every instance of their lives. There are birds who follow ants, which are feeding on the insects that are running away from the ants. And no matter what you do, you just turn a leaf and there is something that will surprise you. Big spiders, tarantulas, you name it.
We are working on a project that it's basically designing a climate corridor. And that means that we are trying to understand how insects, which depend on external temperature, will respond to climate change. We know that the variability in temperature caused by climate change is going to peaks up and down. And so insects basically, since they cannot thermoregulate as well as other organisms do, they will definitely have to move to colder places once the temperature is too high. And we want to understand how far can they move. Pollinators are not that common now. And without pollinators, then what food production will have? We're getting diseases that we didn't have before. And that it's a big issue, especially for the communities that are not used to have contact with those diseases.
Y luego les digo, no, digamos, antes la comunidad, no sé, pero no lo sé en qué año se ha formado la comunidad, pero sí, primeros han sido mis papás. La comunidad para que se forme hemos vivido o sea, así en el monte, ¿no? Virgen, se han hecho su rosacito, de dos familias. Claro, o sea que nosotros, ya los demás comunidades ya están dejando su cultura, pero nosotros todavía, yo por lo menos lo tengo la cultura. Por lo menos lo que hace mi padre, hacía mi padre curación, también yo lo sé. O sea, mi padre nunca agarró planta medicinal, lo ha cantado a un cerro o a un árbol inmenso, lo cantas. Eso se llama un canto psicomágico, ¿no? Huacaria sigue manteniendo la cultura. Hacemos las danzas, hay veces cuando preparan masatos, hacemos los cantos. Yo por lo menos ahora, o sea, antes que yo me muera, tengo que dejar una generación, por lo menos a los niños les estoy enseñando por lo menos.
No, le agradezco muchísimo,
sí,
¿no? Por habernos en este momento. Yo sé que está muy ocupado, ¿no? Sí. Y nuevamente espero que nos veamos pronto y escuchemos cantar.
Listo, sí.
¿No? Va a ser
bueno, sí, yo por mi bien les puedo cantar unos cuantos cantitos de así, pero, o sea, cantos de curación, eso sí, es prohibido cantar. Tienes que tener un paciente, claro. Un paciente teniendo sí puedes cantar, pero un canto de lo que cantamos tomando masato les puedo cantar. Y a canto de la despedida les voy a cantar. Ya como yo también ya me voy a despedir, les voy a cantar el canto de la despedida. Entonces, en Panjay Canonana. Imbata cuata, 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 cuicay. Doa imbata cuata, 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 cuicay. Hapia con, hapia con, hapia con. Wan sipato no pe de tada. Doa india, india. India, India, go si inang bait no pe pa India, India, go nya inang bayo con ne nya dai si India, 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 go.
We're going to visit Los Amigos Biological Station, which is the one at 300 meters above sea level, which is also a lowlands and is more what we know as a tropical rainforest. And in this biological station, we are conducting a number of experiments to understand what happens if there is a change in the hydrological system in the humidity.
The station was founded in the 2000s. It is about 450 hectares, and it's really magical because within that small area, you can find several types of habitats, including palm swamp, terra firme, floodplains, bamboo patches, which makes for a great diversity in bird species, and this is a place that a lot of birders come to visit because of that. I'm working with the park rangers, so they can do the monitoring with camera traps that I do. Camera traps are simply a camera that is activated with a movement sensor. So something goes in front, it takes a photo or a video. It has an AI model installed that tells it about what species are here: tapir, jaguar, ocelot, everything. And you also see like the important role of a species, like the whole community when it's gone or when it reappears.
This is a Brazilian tree. It's a beautiful tree. It's another of the giants. And this is perhaps the tree that has the natural history that is most beautiful among all in the tropics. Everything about this tree is very specialized. And it's hard to imagine that such a big tree, has only one animal who can actually disperse the seeds for reproduction. So the fruits fall, and then there is an animal called the agouti. It's a rodent about this big. On here, we can see some of the fruits. Inside have about 20, 25 nuts, the Brazil nuts, and the agouti is the only animal that has the teeth sharp enough to open this hole and get the seeds and disperse them one by one. Agoutis don't have the best memory of all, so they forget where they hide the nuts, and then those are the seeds that eventually reproduce.
There are studies that shows that trees are migrating maybe 1 meter every 10 years or every few years, but it's not gonna be fast enough. Animals are dying because the food is not appearing when it used to appear, so that synchrony that existed no longer existed, so there's higher death rates because the animals don't have that energy to sustain having more.
The current discussions about the impacts of climate change are more about how much forests fix carbon. It is a partial way of looking at things. We cannot measure the world by carbon. We actually need to restore places to allow species to thrive. Discussion about climate change has to be wider.
I cannot comfortably try to protect wildlife without taking into consideration the human aspect. The main issue around this area is mining. We are right next to the mining corridor, and we also have logging concessions here. They don't have any plan of when they leave the area how to regrow the forests as a formal activity should have.
We are now at the Park Guard station called CM1, the monitoring center #1. We are right now here in the CM1, which is next to the property that belongs to Conservación Amazónica, the NGO who runs the whole operation. We have eyes in the sky. We have satellites, and besides that, we have staff who is constantly patrolling the forest to prevent that there are people coming in like for hunting or cutting wood or even for fishing. So we're keeping this place as pristine as it is.
Tenemos 10 promotores, 10 rangers especializados en ciertas acciones para realizar en campo. Entonces, de esa forma podemos identificar a los ilegales, podemos ir con precisión en qué sitios pueden estar los ilegales, no solamente viendo el corte del machete que hay en el árbol. Y también tenemos a las personas de intervención.
It's important to know that they also have implemented a trail for motorcycle, so they can also do the patrolling along the border with a motorcycle.
Porque justamente en esta zona, desde el 2019 hasta el 2022, teníamos varios indicios de tala ilegal, que estaban cerrando cedro y mayormente el tornillo. En esta zona, esta comunidad, como vemos acá, es la que metía a la gente para que puedan trabajar en esta zona. Y este punto fue muy estratégico para poder movilizarnos por toda esta zona y poder así prevenir y reducir.
También importante para mí cuidar a los animales, estar pendiente de cómo están ellos, cómo se encuentran, verlo, me gusta demasiado. Estoy feliz de estar aquí.
Ustedes han visto en el viaje alrededor todo está lleno de minería, está movido la tierra, movido la arena. Los peces migran para reproducirse al río Los Amigos y luego salen y continúan su recorrido por otras zonas. O sea,
Percy, quería preguntarte sobre el tema de pescado. Entiendo que tú eres uno de los pioneros en desarrollar la industria no la industria, sino la actividad de producción de peces en pozas, ¿no? En piscicultura. ¿Cuál es el objetivo de criar peces y hacer esa producción y cuáles son los resultados?
Todos los pobladores que antes se encontraban en 1 o 2 horas sacaban 2 o 3 kilos de pescado, hoy en día tienen que pasar 2 o 3 días y a veces no encuentran nada. Entonces el objetivo básicamente es tratar de introducir y repoblar todos los... Actualmente cada poblador está haciendo su crianza de aproximadamente de 2.000 alevinos y llegan a la producción de algo de 200 a 300 kilos por año.
We are in our 4th day of our journey, coming down from 4,500 meters. Probably right now we are 300 meters. As you can see, I have behind me a forest that is pristine, as you see it here, and goes for thousands of kilometers. You can fly for 3 or 4 hours and you don't see a road. And that gives you hope. There's still enough the Amazon. In a small patch of forest here, you will find more trees than Japan, more trees than Europe. Today, we saw thousands of different types of parrots, including yellow crowns, blue-headeds. There are some healthy populations of endangered species. Here, they are in a safe place. They are being protected by people, by the governments, by indigenous communities. When you see these places, it gives you hope that there are still pristine areas that are large enough to hold healthy populations of organisms of all sorts. And it is also a responsibility that we all have to keep these places intact.
It's just like mind-blowing. What are we missing out there? Imagine bacteria, imagine all nematodes, imagine every little thing that really makes the system work. But we don't think about them because they're not big or charismatic, but they're there. Discovering them, it's something that we urgently need, and basically the Amazon can provide us. It's this huge place where biodiversity still abounds, and it's right there for us to discover.
A lot of people might think that to have an impact, you have to do big actions. If you have the possibility to donate to environmental causes, that would be great, but there are a lot of things that you can do on your own time and close to your home.
We need to put more efforts in setting aside areas away from human intervention. Luckily, this complex area, which involves several other protected areas plus indigenous lands, holds a good representation of the Amazon, but we need more. The effort of protecting land is one of the best strategies we have to prevent a biodiversity crisis. We have no right to stop these evolutionary processes. It has to be like that. It's a heritage, in some ways it's a responsibility and also a heritage of humankind.